SEC Week 2. There might be some teams on upset alert.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. We're going to do some Week 1 overreactions. We'll preview SEC Week 2, and we'll be joined by our buddy Chris Marler. I am Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode is presented to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our promo code Locked On College, and get $20 off your first purchase. All right, welcome him in. Here's our buddy Chris Marler. He is host of Locked On Gamecocks, as well as several other ventures that he has had to do as mandated by the state. Chris Marler, welcome in.
I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here. It's not court mandated. It is court mandated that I have to talk about Vandy, Mississippi State, but they're also off to a great start, so that's good.
Well, that's where I wanted to start, Marler. We did this last year. I think we may have done it 2 years ago together, but it's always fun to just kind of go out on a limb and do some SEC Week 1 overreactions. So before we get yours, I'll give you mine for just overreacting to what we saw Week 1. Tennessee running back Dylan Sampson is going to lead the SEC in rushing. Am I crazy?
I don't think that's a huge overreaction. Like people forget about the fact that Josh Heupel's offense, because of all of the chunk plays that they get through the air and how exciting it was, especially 2 years ago, this offense is still predicated on the run. It is still predicated on the run, and they've got a really good running back. So you saw that on full display. I mean, they put up like 700 yards, but I think they had 300 or 400 of it was on the ground. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's that far-fetched, because they have been a team that's done this, I think, that's like preached running the football first for a while now.
Do you have a Week 1 overreaction you want to throw out?
I mean, I don't even know if this is an overreaction, but I will say that, like, on both sides, Tennessee is a playoff caliber team. I thought that going into the season. I thought it was on full display on Saturday, even though they only played UT Chattanooga. The other one is that maybe two of the coaches that people thought weren't going to be on the hot seat this year, Shane Beamer and Billy Napier, might both be on the hot seat with how bad each of them looked after Week 1.
Yeah, and Beamer, I've been the one throwing his name into that category. And I had some people, in Columbia tell me, oh, no way. The way Shane's recruiting and all that. I'm like, dude, at the end of the day, you'll win games. I mean, that's what this conference is predicated on. And, that parlays into my other overreaction. Is Vanderbilt going to get to a bowl game? I mean, Diego Pavia has completely changed the landscape of this thing.
So I don't know if they get to a bowl game, but Vanderbilt over 2.5 wins before the season might have been the lock of the year. It feels like it's like the third time in 4 years that's been the case. I do want to go back and say one quick thing about the South Carolina things, because I know that we are going to promote this on both channels, yours and mine. I don't want South Carolina fans getting all upset about the Beamer thing. I don't think he's on the hot seat unless he only wins 3 games. I will tell you who is on the hot seat and should be is Dowell Loggins, because if that doesn't improve on the offensive side of the ball, my biggest overreaction hot take so far this season is that Sean Elliott, the former head coach at Georgia State and now the tight ends coach at Carolina, he might end up being the play caller before the season's over with.
Isn't the last South Carolina tight ends coach, was he the head coach at Murray State this past weekend?
He was. His resume and bio is incredible. Incredible.
That guy had he's never been a head coach before, right? This is his first big job.
No, but whoever wrote his resume or the PR press release about his background, every single time I want not even just a job resume, I want anything nice said about me. I want that person writing it, because it was, I think the word they used was unparalleled or unmatched in terms of his coaching pedigree. Yeah, it's incredible.
It would be like Chris Marler once served 50 Cent at a restaurant.
That's right.
Just tie you into a bunch of famous people, but he once brushed by Urban Meyer. I
don't want that. No, No, I don't even know why that was your example.
Here's a few. Well, Urban's brushed by a lot of people. Jackson Dart will throw over 4,000 yards. That was one of my off-season predictions, and so far so good. I mean, what did he throw for week 1?
418.
Yeah, whatever it was. It was stupid. So I feel pretty good about that prediction. I think I said on the podcast here 2 weeks ago, but I went on the record. We did an episode this week, and I said Nico Iamaleava could win the Heisman this year.
Mhm.
But my actual prediction was Jalen Milroe will win the Heisman. And I mean, shoot, he threw for 200 yards. They were like all to Ryan Williams. And man, it's hard not to get excited if you're a Bama fan. I know all the Bama fans were super excited. I still want to see them play somebody tougher in competition, but hard not to get excited about what you saw from them.
It was odd because, like, yeah, you can't be upset with a 63-0 win. Offensively, I mean, it seemed like all of it came in like on 4 or 5 plays. Like, Justice Haynes had like an 84, 86-yard touchdown run. So he ended the day with like 4 carries, 104 yards. Milroe was like 7 of 9 for 200 yards. Like, they did really, really well, but a lot of it was not having to sustain any drives. I will tell you this. They were facing an offense for Western Kentucky it's still Western Kentucky, but they have been ranked 15th, 1st, and 2nd in the country the last 3 years in passing offense, and they held them to like 103 total yards to the air. So that was also impressive.
Has there ever been, I was trying to think back, has there ever been a 17-year-old player in the SEC that's like been awesome immediately? Like, I mean, I think back, I mean, so many years you had to wait your turn. Like, it was rare you played as a starter, as a true freshman anywhere, but that was pretty impressive from Ryan Williams, and crazy to think where he'll be in 2 years.
Yeah, I think the most depressing thing I saw from the entire weekend wasn't anything that had to do with Florida State, which is shocking, but it was when somebody said Ryan Williams' birthday will happen 2 weeks after the national championship game, for like when he turns 18, which means he wasn't alive during the Nick Saban introductory press conference when he became the head coach. That's unreal.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I can't wait for the day at Alabama where the kids are like, yeah, man, you get to carry on the legacy of Coach Saban. They go, who? I don't remember. I wasn't alive for him. Bobby Petrino is going to save Sam Pittman's job. Is that an overreaction?
If they win this weekend, I don't think it is an overreaction. I mean, like, that schedule is tough, but I just, again, I think it says so much about Pittman's commitment to being the head coach there, because he was very familiar with his coordinators, had the same ones, I think, for his first 3 or 4 years, like in a row. And the continuity they had in that in those staff meetings, I'm sure, with the 2 coordinators and him going unchanged, I think, for his first 3 or 4 years, like I said, that's great. But once you start to struggle and you have to make changes and you have to realize that Pittman can't always just be the nice guy and he's got to make some like cutthroat decisions. I thought it was great that he, I think it was surprising that he went out and got Petrino. But and the other thing too is, John Neighbors talks about this all the time. I don't know if he's in danger of losing that job and having it immediately go to Petrino. Like, I don't think that's the intent from Petrino, because from everything we've been told, he doesn't want to deal with NIL, and this could just be a perfect, marriage, which is unlike most Petrino things.
And shout out to our buddy Taylon Green, guest on the show, and he's tearing it up. Let's see if he can go do it this weekend. How about this one? Your South Carolina fans will like this one. Dylan Stewart is the next Jadeveon Clowney.
Dude, what a start. That defense I knew was going to be good. The defensive line and the edge, the guys off the edge, because he was listed as like, 3rd string on the depth chart. First game of his entire career, ends up being co-defensive end or co-defensive player of the week or whatever it was, as a true freshman. Incredible job against a Old Dominion offensive line that was really, really bad a year ago. So he's got to keep that up. But I mean, I love the trajectory of it. What is he, like, on pace for like 24 sacks? Yeah, no, it's going to be insane. By the way, Ryan Williams just asked, I said Jadeveon Clowney. He went, who? I don't know who that is. Yeah.
One other overreaction here. Payton Thorne actually good at quarterback?
So I think he could be. I'm looking at my girlfriend right now because she's an Auburn grad. I do think Payton Thorne and what Auburn did, that's what I expect to see from the offense this year. Obviously not 70 points per game, but like, I was surprised that Hugh wasn't able to turn that offense around a little quicker last year, because that's what he's done at every stop, right? Like, that's what he's done at every single stop. There was never going to be a position unit in the country that improved more, like in the entire country, than the Auburn receiving room for what they had last season versus this season. And, like, obviously you got to give credit to Thorne because he's got to throw him the football, but what a tremendous, tremendous glow up for everyone involved in that offense, especially him.
Yeah, and I like that crew. They had, about 4 or 5 years ago, but this is different. I mean, if this group, I mean, they're all freshmen, with Keandre Lambert-Smith, but like if they continue to grow and do this, it's gonna be something special for Auburn. Hugh Freeze might have something going there at Auburn finally. So we'll see what happens there. All right, we got more with Chris Marler. We're gonna get into the SEC Week 2 slate here coming up in just a second here on a Locked On crossover edition, Locked On SEC, Locked On Gamecocks. First, I want to remind you guys, this episode is presented to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. Look, when you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to go check out our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn is not just another job board. LinkedIn is going to help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional over at LinkedIn Jobs. Go post your job for free. It's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. As we dive back into it with our buddy Chris Marler, we are previewing the SEC Week 2 slate. Marler, it was Cupcake City in Week 1. There's a lot of cupcakes in Week 2, as it would be as well. We'll get to some of the bigger games here in just a second, but a couple quick hitters, just a quick thought on some of the other games going on. Nichols at LSU. This is one where LSU just got to kind of bounce back, and sucks to lose late to USC like they did, but got to get their legs back under them and get some things going.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like a get-right game. Just the bad news continued over the week with some injury stuff and all that kind of John Emery Jr. and like that just sucks for that kid. Hate it. So it feels like it's been a deflating couple of days in a row. But they're not in danger of losing this game at all. I think it'll be a really good game. Nussmeier was everything and more than we could have wanted or expected, I think, in game 1. Yeah. And I think the real issues that you have moving forward is that offensive line needs to be better and as good as I think they even, proclaimed they were going to be going into the season, because you got 2 great tackles, but interior, man, they got beat up against USC.
And they were good pass protecting. The run blocking is where they need to improve. And so somebody asked me earlier this week, give me a dark horse for Heisman. I said, how about Garrett Nussmeier? They went, well, he lost the game. I said, well, he threw for 300 yards. I said, keep in mind, he still has potential wins against Alabama, Ole Miss, Oklahoma. Like, he can build a resume up where it's not the craziest thing to say he could be in the conversation at the end of the year. Just saying. McNeese at Texas A&M. You talk about a get-right game. A&M has got to fix that offense at Connor Wegman.
I mean, I like what Will Wade's been able to do at McNeese. A lot of people are familiar with him, with the FBI and LSU, a lot of acronyms involved. I know nothing about McNeese. I just now realized it's not McNeese State. So, like another game that I think A&M should probably win. Wegman's he's got to figure it out. Like that is, of all the things that I think were most shocking a week ago around the SEC, him being that bad was maybe at the top of the list. And so you got to get him back to that early 2023 form, and you got a chance to do it, obviously, against a, FCS opponent?
Yeah, well, the other thing is all those draft nerds who were like, they put out their my 2025 mock draft. I have Connor Wegman going in the first round. Like, okay, you might want to pull back a little bit on that one. Tennessee Tech at Georgia. Look, Georgia got the big emotional win over Clemson in Week 1. Now they get a chance to kind of sit back and relax. It is weird, though, that what's going on with Trevor Etienne. We all assumed he was suspended Week 1 for the DUI arrest. And then Kirby's asked about it again this week, and he's like, I got to protect the kid and his family. I'm like, wait, so what is it? Is it suspended for the DUI, or is it something else? It's just really strange what's going on there. But obviously a week to kind of rest a lot of people this week.
Yeah, and the charges were dropped from the DUI, right? So it's like it's an odd situation. In Kirby's defense, this is something that a lot of people were challenging him on all offseason, that he didn't have a disciplined program. And didn't go out of his way to discipline any of his players. And, so give credit where credit's due, because it feels like that's probably what he's doing right now. It also helps in the fact that you might not need him, because that running back room is already loaded, even with a few injuries. That kid, Nate Frazier, is the truth. Like, that kid is going to, if he wasn't the starter going into the season, I think he was listed as third string. I think that kid could potentially be one of the best backs in the country before he leaves the NFL. He's really good.
He'd probably start on any other team
without a doubt.
Talk about teams dropping state. It's Nichols or Nicholls State, McNeese or McNeese State. It was Middle Tennessee State, now just Middle Tennessee. I'm reading, but anyway, they're at Ole Miss, and Derek Mason, former Vanderbilt head coach, is now the head coach at Middle Tennessee, and he was given major props to Lane Kiffin as one of the most creative play callers out there this week. But Ole Miss, man, they order 3 to 4 cupcakes every offseason for their non-con.
Yeah, and they somehow get away with it because they end up playing a road game against a somewhat good team or a Power 4 opponent like Tech or I think Wake Forest this year and Tulane a year ago. That being said, MTSU dropping the SU, if you want to drop anything, they need to take a page out of Ole Miss's playbook and drop that mascot. I went to MTSU for my first semester of college. There are few things that haunt my dreams more than a blue unicorn horse named Lightning. That is you absolutely get a new mascot. But no, I mean, I think that the Jackson Dart hype train continues to roll on. Like I think at this point you kind of wonder, they don't have to play anybody with a pulse until October. Will he get over 20 touchdowns in the month of September alone?
Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if they dropped the state. I'm just reading. It just says Middle Tennessee on ESPN. But no, I mean, I think Lane's going to do his best to try to get, Jackson Dart into the Heisman conversation. I mean, we saw when he was the OC at Alabama, he ran Derrick Henry into the ground. You're like, why does he have 38 carries? And it's like, he's going to try to pad stats and get those numbers up there because that's what gets you in the Heisman conversation. And so I can see that easily with Jackson Dart this year. Like, why are they still throwing the football? They're up 40. Doesn't matter. We're going to pad our stats and put up big numbers. How about Buffalo at Mizzou? That's a weird one in week 2, but Brady Cook and company looked pretty good last Thursday night in a game maybe not a ton of people watched, but Luther Burden did his thing, and the defense looked good. That's the big challenge for Mizzou, right, is how good is this defense going to be with all the pieces they lost?
So honestly, I thought the defense was fine. It was a ridiculous game to watch, and I watched it. I was actually at a Mizzou fan's house, which I thought would be fun, a fun way to start the year. But watching Murray State open the game with an onside kick, not recover it, then fumble on the next or throw an interception or whatever it was on another drive, and then also have I think they went for on 4th and 1, like on inside of their own 35. That all happened in like the first 10 minutes of the game. So if there's anything to work on, I think with Mizzou, the deep ball from Brady Cook especially did not look great. Like there were very few chunk plays. I felt like that they did not connect on anything deep for most of the night. That's been something that he struggled with over the last year or two in general. And also Luther Burden did not really get going. They gave him some targets and touches in the first drive, especially. But I think the night was only like 3 catches and 30-something yards.
Yeah. Well, it felt like one of those they didn't need to, Right. I mean, it's the opposite of what Lane Kiffin would have had him out there in the fourth quarter still catching passes. So, but yeah, you keep in mind, they got a big one against Vandy coming up in a couple weeks. They got one against Boston College, don't they? Like
and UMass on the road.
Or UMass, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what Mizzou can do. Samford at Florida, interesting. I don't think we mentioned on the show this week, but DJ Lagway, it's announced that he will get to start. Graham Mertz still in concussion protocol, but this is Florida's, like, if you look at the FPI, this is their only like guaranteed win basically is Samford. So I don't know, maybe a glimpse of the future. Let Lagway let it hang out and see how good he looks.
Let it what now?
His arms.
So here's the thing. I've been saying this since the schedule has been like started to be brought up like on social media before last season. There's only one game that's been on the schedule where it's like a gimme win that I think most people consider a gimme win, and it's this game against Samford. But let's not forget that in 2021, they played Samford at home, and they gave up 52 points to him in the Swamp. So I don't know who is still there for Samford at all. But I definitely think it's one of those things. Billy Napier can't afford to overlook anybody, especially a bottle of Dasani. But with Lagway getting the start, I think that it does open the door to, if he can figure out a way to navigate this correctly, it kind of opens the door to maybe that leash getting a little bit looser. Because Lagway is he's been one of the only, if not the only, bright spot for this program over the last year plus. I mean, like it has been a long calendar year for them, and he has been like one of the only bright spots.
A couple more here real quick. Alcorn State at Vandy. Again, just another opportunity for Diego Pavia to get a win.
And Vandy, because the the season win total again was 2.5, and now you're talking about almost getting that in the first 2 weeks. So I love that. But yeah, listen, if you haven't watched Diego Pavia, like, I'm not saying you should watch this game, but at least watch the highlights. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's been really, really good so far.
Yeah, we call that guy tough SOB the way he plays, brother. Houston at Oklahoma, man, if this game were 2 years from now, Willie Fritz had built up his program to where it needs to be, this one could be interesting, but God, they lost to Barry Odom's UNLV crew last week, and the offense was a lot of nothing. I like Willie Fritz as a coach. I think he's going to be awesome down the road. You know, was awesome at Tulane, but this one could get ugly over in Norman.
Yeah, it's odd that this is a Power 4 opponent that they're facing. The line has jumped up a lot this week in favor of Oklahoma. It'll probably continue to do that in forward kickoff. If you're Oklahoma, like, you want to see more from the offense. Like, they looked great last week. They, like, the defense, I think, and special teams, they had. I know they outscored Temple. I don't know if they scored once or twice, but Jackson Arnold, he put up good numbers in terms of touchdowns and everything like that. But you want to see a little bit more, like, time spent on the field, like more sustained drives, all those things. And get to know that, like, when you're going to have to need him, like in a couple weeks against Tennessee, that he's going to be dependable and it won't look like that Alamo Bowl.
Yeah, and they kind of, I guess, you know, they got such an early lead early that they did a rotation of backs, but I'd like to see Sawchuck kind of get going. You know, he was the guy who really emerged for them last year. All right, last one this segment, South Florida at Alabama. It's a little PTSD game for some Alabama fans out there who remember that game in the rain last year and the quarterback carousel and all that. And I think it's been really funny. All the USF fans kind of talking trash on social media all week to Alabama fans, acting like they're going to win. But I don't know. It could be a fun one to watch. But this one feels like it's going to be more of the same of what Bama did in week one.
Yeah, you would hope so if you're a Bama fan, because that game last year was worse than. I mean, honestly, it might have been worse than several losses that you've had to watch over the last several years. That's how unfun it was. And Tommy Rees giving Tyler Buckner the start that day was, oh my God. I still don't know if he knows he's left-handed. That's how bad it was when he was playing South Florida. Here's the thing. I think Bama should win this game. Obviously, they struggled with him a year ago. It's also, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, but Alex Golish, the head coach, was under Heupel at Tennessee. One of the masterminds behind that 2022 offense that had so much success. That offense for USF, at the very least, is seasoned and has a lot of veterans. I think 9 of the 11 starters are graduate seniors. So it's just a team full of Stetson Bennett's on the offense. So it'll be interesting to see if they can keep it close. I think, like last week, Bama, 63-0. I don't expect them to have a second straight shutout, but you want to see, obviously, them dedicating the field to Saban as well, them walk away with a big win.
That's what I was going to say. The other big moment, it's going to be Nick Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And, if the fans can get fired up and loud for that one, I mean, come on. They're going to win this one going away.
Who is Denny, by the way? What did he have on anybody at that university that his name is still so prevalent?
Well, and Paul Feinbaum called for that, too. He said, yeah, you already got Denny Chimes. Like, we could take his name, and it could be Bryant Saban Stadium. But, that might be
Bryant Saban DeBoer.
I know. Well, maybe one day. Are we sure Denny wasn't a Confederate war vet? We can get that name removed very quickly these days. So
I'm not coming.
More to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day.
If he was, they probably would have claimed war victory for the Civil War there. God, nailed it, Joe.
All right, real quick here. I want to remind you guys this episode is presented to you by our friends over at the Game Time app. Look, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for your favorite live event even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save more on sporting events, concerts, whatever it is. The all-in pricing feature, my favorite. You can toggle that feature, shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Of course, seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Go download the Game Time app today. Create an account. If you've never used them before, use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That'll get you $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account. Redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. All right, final segment with our buddy Chris Marler. We're taking a look at the SEC Week 2 slate. We ran through all the cupcakes. Let's get to some of the games that actually could be intriguing. And we'll start with one that, man, I've just been smelling upset on this all week. It's probably going to burn me, but Arkansas at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is a 7.5-point home favorite. But Marler, we were gushing already on, Bobby Petrino and Taylon Green. Jaquindon Jackson at running back looks really good. This one feels like this is a game that Sam Pittman wins this. I think it might save his job this year.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think like what they did a week ago on offense, I don't care who they were playing, was really, really impressive. The thing that is most like the weirdest part about this game, and I have zero feel for or like how you should bet on it or who to pick. Like, because my heart's and like emotionally, I feel like I want to pick Arkansas because it's a much better story, and I love Sam Pittman, and I want to see him succeed for as long as possible in this conference. The other side of me is like, what is going on that Oklahoma State was a 8.5-point favorite at home against like South Dakota State, and then they're only a 7.5-point favorite against Arkansas? Because I just cannot wrap my head around that. And also, they're doing that while they're ranked, 16th in the country. So it's not like they're an unranked team that Vegas doesn't have a ton of respect for. I love the hook on this one. So like I would take Arkansas to cover. I just don't know if their defense is going to be able to play as physical as they're going to need to on the road for 60 straight minutes, especially against Ollie Gordon.
Yeah, and Ollie Gordon had 126 yards rushing last week, and we know he's going to run the football well, but I'm with you. To me, it's on the Arkansas defense. I feel good that the Arkansas offense can score, but does this thing get into a shootout? And it's like last one with the ball wins, but yeah, Arkansas is going to have to slow down that run game. We'll see how good that linebacking core is and that defensive front. So who are you picking? You said take the hook, right? Maybe the 7.5.
Yeah, I'm taking Arkansas to cover, but I think Oklahoma State will probably win. And listen, even if it's a close game, like just show that you can be competitive. Something that they struggled to do at times last year.
Yeah, and of course, certainly struggled to do throughout the Chad Morris era. How about Cal at Auburn? This is the return visit of the trip out there last year, and that game might have set football back 50 years. It was so ugly. Auburn survived that one 14-10, but much better Auburn team, more up-tempo offense and high-powered offense. And this is one I saw the line was 13. Auburn minus 13. It's a lot of points, but Cal's not as good this year, and Auburn's much better.
Yeah, I mean, Cal was in a dogfight for the first half against UC Davis a week ago. Listen, this game will feature two of the most underrated running backs in the country with Jaden Ott and obviously Jarquez Hunter. I think that Auburn should win this game and win it big. Honestly, if you're from a betting standpoint, I like Auburn to win and cover. I like them to cover the 6.5 points in the first half. I like Payton Thorne to have more than 2 passing touchdowns. Like I like everything that they've put up on the board so far in Auburn's favor. The thing that they cannot afford to do is get into a turnover war and back and forth like they did a year ago, because there were 7 total combined turnovers between the two last year. I think Auburn had 4 of them, and it was, like you said, a very, very ugly game. Cal is, I think they were ranked 130th in the country a year ago in total turnovers. They were also first in turnovers gained. They were like third to last in turnovers lost. They were first for turnovers gained. It was 28 apiece. As long as Auburn can protect the football, there's nothing about Cal that should scare anyone this weekend in Jordan-Hare.
And I'm going to take Auburn minus the 13. I think they'll cover that at home. The next one, this is the ABC game of the night. Tennessee is against NC State. It's in Charlotte, I believe, Bank of America Stadium. This line has moved, man. I'm looking at it right now. It's NC State plus 10. Tennessee is a 10-point favorite, but it does feel like these two teams were moving in opposite direction in week 1. NC State had kind of an ugly win, and Tennessee just dominated Chattanooga. I think I don't know. The more vibe I get on this, feels like Tennessee's going to run away with this one. That's saying something against a top 25 team.
I don't know if they'll run away with it, just because NC State at the very least should be a well-coached team. They do seem to always like show up to an extent, not necessarily winning those games, but they show up to an extent in their big games over the past couple of seasons under Dave Doran. Listen, it's in their backyard. A game's in Charlotte, which is only a 4-hour drive from Knoxville as well. I think that the key to this for Tennessee is doing what they have done better than any other team in the country under Josh Heupel, and that's score early and score often. I mean, they have like in 40 games as Josh Heupel under Josh Heupel as the head coach of Tennessee, they have scored first in 32 of them. And they have been really, really good at getting off and an early, sometimes like a double-digit lead in the first quarter games. I think they can do that against NC State. I also think that if there's a game that you should throw away and not consider into this week as much, it's NC State from a week ago. I don't expect them to show up and look like that twice, but I do think Tennessee is one of the better teams in the country, and they're ranked way too low. So I expect them to win and cover.
Yeah, if NC State plays like they did a week ago, Tennessee will win by 30. I'm going to take Tennessee minus the 10. I think they win and win big. Late night, this is going to be the getting in bed, going nighty-night game. It is Mississippi State at Arizona State on ESPN. I still don't know what the hell Mississippi State is. Jeff Lebby is Jeff Lebby's been, passed with flying colors week one. Him and Blake Shapen look great. I give Mississippi State a chance here. They're a 5.5 point road dog, but boy, you play with house money, man. You got nothing to lose.
I think that like the 5.5 points really makes me want to lean towards Mississippi State because that is a line that has traditionally like benefited the underdog. I think like 73% of teams that were a 5 to 5.5 point underdog over the last like decade were they at least covered, and I want to say like 29% of them won outright. I don't know if they're going to win out there. They are playing up against an Arizona State team that was 3-9 a year ago. You could argue their best player isn't there anymore because he's on the bench at UGA. So I don't know if it's a young team. It's a young program, obviously, Mississippi State going out like to the desert and late at night, like you said, like they will not be in their comfort zone. But 5.5 points for Arizona State, like that doesn't make any sense to me. I think if there's an upset pick of the week, it's Mississippi State.
Yeah, it's one that I'm going to stay away from. But if I was sitting in a sports book with some buddies and it's, the only game going on in Vegas, heck, let's take the live dog in Mississippi State, and let's see if they can win. We got two more big games to go this week. Texas at Michigan. Michigan, a 7.5 point underdog at the Big House. Man, the more and more I start to look at this game, Marler, the more I start to say, is everyone piling on Texas a little bit too much here, saying, easy win for Sark in Texas. I talked to a guy who covers Michigan a week ago. He said the key to this game is those Michigan DBs. They still have some really good defensive backs that can cover. I just wonder if Texas can't run the ball effectively. Remember, they have Jaden Blue and basically a bunch of scrappies. If they have to, become one-dimensional and just throw, and Quinn Ewers throws a badly timed interception, which he's been prone to do in the past, did it against Oklahoma last year, maybe Michigan finds himself in a game in the fourth quarter.
I mean, yeah, like that's the blueprint if Michigan wants to win this game or keep it close. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that, like I said this summer, I think when the line was at 4.5 or 5, that Texas was one of the locks of the year. Here's the bottom line. I could see everything you just said playing out that way. I could see like Michigan does still have a lot of good skill guys, and they got several projected first round picks, and I think a bunch of them or most of them are on defense. What they don't have is a quarterback or an identity on offense yet. And what worries me if you're Michigan is that, one, the biggest feather in their cap over the last several years, it probably isn't even the national title. It's the fact they beat Ohio State for 3 years in a row. Buddy, everyone down here beats Ohio State. They're like 2-12 in the last 14 games against SEC teams. Michigan lost 13 players to the NFL draft. They lost their head coach. They lost a first-round draft pick at quarterback, and they lost like 5 assistants. And the thing is, even when they won the national championship, they have not recruited well enough to be like in the same breath as some of these elite teams. Like from a roster talent standpoint, they've had one top 10 finish in recruiting over the last 4 years. And after winning the national title, they finished 16th. So like talent-wise, Texas is far superior to Michigan. I think they'll put it on them, and I think they'll put it on them early and win by double digits. Yeah,
and they lost Connor Stallions. Nobody can steal the signs from Texas. So that'll be tough too. I'm going to take Texas minus the points. But again, this is one, if I'm sitting at the sports book at a casino, I'm going to bet on Michigan. Again, home underdog. When's the last time Michigan was a 7.5 point underdog at home against somebody other than Ohio State? It's probably been a while.
They usually haven't played anybody that's ranked over the pulse until like week 12 in November. So
that's true. It's normally like Bowling Green and ECU and teams like that. All right. Lastly, Marler, it is the big game of the week. It is the SEC game of the week. Our first SEC versus SEC matchup. It is South Carolina at Kentucky. And man, preseason, I think this one was around a 6.5 point Kentucky favorite. It is now an 8.5 point Kentucky favorite because of South Carolina struggling with Old Dominion in week 1, while Kentucky played about 2.5 quarters of really good football against Southern Miss. This is very interesting. I mean, this is a big one for Mark Stoops because they got some bigger games down the road. So this one is almost a must win if you're Kentucky. And if you're South Carolina, man, would it be a big feather in Shane Beamer's cap to go on the road and beat Kentucky. Remember, they beat them last year, but Kentucky had the injury at quarterback and couldn't do anything on offense. Right. But man, this is one again. I got to go with Kentucky at home. But can Lenore Sellers pull a rabbit out of his hat and do something special this week? Because I wasn't fully impressed with him in that offense in week 1.
No, he was the worst quarterback in the conference a week ago. Listen, I think that if you're looking at this game breaking down like this, Shane Beamer has a chance to win against Kentucky and Mark Stoops for the 3rd straight year, which would be huge. And it would also, like, after last week, like, it was immediate doom and gloom, sky is falling from the fan base because of how bad they looked against ODU. I will say that when you look at these two teams, there's a path for South Carolina to win. You brought up the 8.5 points. It's up to 10 in some books. And I don't think that's even that far-fetched. I can understand why it would be that high. That being said, if they can take the blueprint for what they've done the past 2 years, which is hold them to under 16 points or less, because they have never scored over 16 points against Clayton White in the Shane Beamer era, and if they can win the turnover battle and also get on them early in games where South Carolina, or I'm sorry, when Kentucky scores first, I think it's happened like 11 times over the last 2 seasons. They're 9-2. In their last 13 games where they don't score first against, like, Power 4 opponents and like actual teams of the pulse, they are 3-13. The last 2 seasons, South Carolina has scored first. One, I think the first quarter, like 7-0 and 10-0. They're going to have to do that. They're going to have to hold them to under 20 points total. I think over the last 5 years, Mark Stoops teams that don't score over 21 points are 3-20. So that is the key to victory. Now, that being said, I think it'll be a close game. I just don't trust the South Carolina team with how young they are, especially on offense, to not make enough mistakes or one fatal mistake late in the game. So I will take Kentucky, but I'll take South Carolina to cover the spread as well. Also, man, Beamer's 2-10 in true road games against SEC opponents, losing those 10 games by an average of like 20.7 points per game.
It's a tough go, and a couple of his big upsets. I mean, the big win at Tennessee was, the win against Tennessee a couple years ago. I mean, that was, we had great quarterback play with Spencer Rattler, and the win over Clemson. You're gonna have to get great quarterback play if they're going to pull off this win. I just, Brad White and that defense of Kentucky. I mean, it's, they had 2 takeaways this past week: J.Q. Hardaway and Jamin Dumas-Johnson. J.J. Weaver got a sack. I mean, I think this Kentucky team is actually got some of the more nice talent that they've had in recent years there from Mark Stoops. So I think they do win this one, and I'll take them minus the points. Marler, let everybody know where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, so Friday will be a big day. We got content coming out everywhere on social media. Vern Funquist CFB on Twitter and Instagram, and then we have our Fourth and Wrong podcast that we just recorded a couple days ago. Gordy is a favorite guest and a routine repeat guest as well. And then Locked On Gamecocks and also Cover Crimson, covering Alabama as well.
And of course, we talk all things SEC here on Locked On SEC. We thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. You can check out our Locked On College Football podcast as well. Spencer McLaughlin, you can make that your second listen, or Locked On Gamecocks with our buddy Chris Marler. Make that your second listen. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Have a great SEC week too, everybody. Drink responsibly and come out of the weekend safe. And we'll talk to you guys on Monday.